In the last video, we talked about how North Korea's economy collapsed, how the famine began, and the conditions that led to mass defection. That history is well documented. But facts alone don't tell you what it felt like. What's harder to understand is the moment of choice. At some point, survival stops being an abstract concept. It becomes a decision made in a specific place at a specific time by a specific person. If these stories are meant to be told responsibly, if we want to understand what the North Koreans actually went through, then reading reports is not enough. At some point, you've got to go to the places where these decisions were made. That is why I believe in field work, and why I decided to retrace the path of defection myself. Defections occurred along two border rivers, the Yalu and the Tumen. But for tens of thousands of people, history narrowed down to just three places: Musan, Hoeryong, and Onsong. This is where the Tumen River becomes narrow and shallow. In some seasons, it can be crossed on foot. A few dozen meters of water separated two systems, two lives, two futures. On the opposite bank are three Korean-Chinese villages, Nanping, Sanhe, and Liangshui, places where defectors hoped someone might help. Between the mid-1990s and the mid-2000s, it's estimated that more than 100,000 North Koreans crossed into China through these 3 points alone. To understand what that journey really meant, I rented a car and went to all three.
That is North Korea. You can see all the cornfields all the way out to the mountain. Not a lot of trees left.
Hello viewers, I have arrived at the first crossing spot. Where I'm standing right now is a tiny county by the border called Nanping. And the North Korean city on the other side of these mountains is called Musan, a tiny little town in North Hamgyong province, the northernmost province in North Korea. So far north, it is actually closer to the Russian city of Vladivostok than Pyongyang. Like many Asian civilizations, the Koreans also have measured their success in life by the proximity to the imperial power, which means the closer you live to the nation's capital, the more successful you are, and vice versa. That's why for centuries, only criminals and the officials that greatly angered the king would be exiled to this godforsaken place with the most barren land and the most unforgiving winter. And because of that, North Hamgyong province, this region in general, is believed to have the toughest and the most badass Koreans in the world. By the early 20th century, this province was so sparsely populated that people believe there were more tigers in the mountains than the humans. But all this changed after the Japanese showed up, because North Hamgyong province was on the path of Japanese conquest of Manchuria, China's northeast. And on top of that, the Japanese found some unexploited coal and iron ores near Musan. Because of that, Musan quickly developed into a booming village with a lot of industries and factories of all kinds. After World War II and the Korean War, the North Korean government sent most of its South Korean captives to the mines as far away from the 30th parallel as possible. Many were sent to the mines in Musan to work, and after they all died out, new waves of unwanted people would replace them. Musan stayed that way for decades, producing coal, producing iron, exploiting the unwanted people, and repeating the cycle. But in the 1990s, the famine in North Korea and the economic miracle in China changed everything. Musan had to shut down its factories due to the lack of electricity, which turned it into a ghost town on the surface. Because beneath the surface, this place was bustling with smugglers. Because you see, Musan is situated near one of the narrowest and shallowest stretches of the Tumen River. Along with Hoeryong and Onsong, Musan was rapidly developing into one of the most popular spots for illegal border crossings into China. And it was a thriving industry, perhaps the only one in North Korea. While we are on this topic, I might as well walk you through this whole process step by step so that you have a basic understanding of how defection was done back then. Try to imagine yourself as a North Korean citizen in 1997, the height of the famine, when things went from bad to worse, and from worse straight to hell. With your own eyes, you saw half of your family starved to death, and things were not getting better in the foreseeable future. However, just across the river, you could see more and more cars driving on the road, and buildings were getting taller and taller. You could hear farmers from the other side of the river harvesting. You could confirm with your own eyes that life in China looked good. And you wanted to cross the river, not because you hated the regime or anything. You just want to survive the famine, like any other living creature on Earth that has a desire to live. So this was what you needed to know. First, you would need to bribe your way to either Musan, Hoeryong, or Onsong. You should consider yourself lucky because people from other parts of North Korea didn't even have the chance to bribe their way to this borderland. Secondly, you would need to hire a guide who knew exactly where those crossing spots were and which guards to bribe. The guide would then carefully schedule the crossing on a moonless night at exactly the time when the border guards were most likely asleep. Then the truck driver would take you and the guide to the outskirts of Musan, down a dirt road that ran parallel to the river, where the guard posts were spaced 200 meters apart. When the road ended at the cornfield, your guide would leave you and tell you to keep walking towards the river, and then you were on your own. After crossing the cornfield, you would wade through the icy Tumen River in complete darkness for a few minutes to reach China. In autumn, the river will only reach your knee. In winter, it will freeze and you can actually walk on it. But in spring, it will reach all the way up to your chin and you must swim a little. If you couldn't swim at all, you could even pay a border guard to carry you across. Yes, that was how desperate things were back then. The border guards would help you cross the exact border they are supposed to guard for food. Anyways, once on the other side, you would find a second guide waiting for you in darkness. And the second guide will pick you up and arrange a job or accommodation for you in the nearby Korean Chinese village or a city like Yanji, Longjing, or Heilong. This would definitely cost you, but it was still way cheaper than getting caught by the North Korean border guards or the Chinese border guards. So, it's your choice. However, if you couldn't afford the professionals, you could still do it by yourself. A lot riskier though, but doable. You'd have to locate and navigate the crossing points on your own and pray nobody would spot you. Once on the other side, you must arrange your own accommodation by knocking on the doors of the nearby Korean Chinese villages and praying they would be friendly to you and wouldn't call the police. Because not everyone, not even the Korean Chinese, would appreciate the surprise visit of a North Korean defector in the middle of the night. Alright, that's a wrap for the first crossing spot. Let's head over to the next one, shall we?
Got back to my car. I think I'm too close to the border. There's actually a time difference between my iPhone and the car. The car says it's 1 p.m., 1:34 p.m. And my phone says it's 2:35 p.m. My phone thinks I'm in North Korea right now. So if you call police, the local farmers can get up to 2,000 RMB, which is close to $300. Might not be much to you, but to the local farmers, this is a lot of money. So yeah, if you can't afford a professional, you really have to, wish yourself good luck. We are getting close, folks. That city you see there, that is the city of Hoeryong.
About 100 kilometers northeast of Nanping County is Sanhe County, and the North Korean city right over there is called Hoeryong, another very popular defection spot for the North Koreans. And while I'm here, I'd like to explain to you why, out of all the North Korean defectors, the vast majority were women. You see, Korean women have a certain mystique to the Chinese since the old days. For 1,000 years, countless Korean women were sent to China as wives, concubines, or maids. And the acquisition of a beautiful Korean concubine was actually a fad among the ruling elites of China, be that Chinese, Mongolians, or Manchus. One 14th century Chinese official in Daidu, current-day Beijing, wrote this: 京师达官贵人必得高丽女，然后为名家。高丽晚媚善事，人质则多夺宠。自至正以来，宫中几事使令大半为高丽女，以故四方衣服鞋帽器物皆依高丽样子。And that is just what the outsiders think of the Korean women in general. Among the Koreans themselves, people talk about Southern men, Northern women. So allegedly, the women from North Korea are considered even prettier than the women from South Korea. And in the 1990s, these beauties were starving. Meanwhile, just meters away across the Tumen River, the scenery was completely different. Vast cornfields stretched for miles. These villages had plenty of food. But guess what ran in short supply? Women. In China, the one-child policy and the traditional preference for sons started to take a toll on its demographics. Girls are significantly outnumbered by boys, and on top of that, China's opening up policy created many factory jobs in its coastal cities, and many young women in their late teens moved away from their hometown to fill those jobs that paid much better. Bachelors in the countryside were having a very difficult time finding wives. So they turned to the marriage brokers, who roughly charged them about $300 for their services, more if they can deliver young and good-looking women. But young and good-looking were not the only ones in high demand. Healthy women well into their 60s were also in demand to cook and keep houses. As a result, many women from neighboring countries were smuggled into China to fulfill this huge demand. And for bachelors in northeast China, especially those Korean Chinese, what better place than North Korea to look for such women? So, very quickly, another booming industry was born: international marriage brokerage. And within just 1 decade, tens of thousands of North Korean women were sold to the Chinese men. And while we are on this topic, I'd like to walk you through this process step by step so that you have a basic understanding of how this international marriage was done back in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Imagine yourself as a young and hungry North Korean girl who was too traumatized by the famine to care anything. You just wanted food. And you heard on the other side of the river, people had so much food that their dogs ate better than you. You were not sure if that was just another lie, but deep down, you wanted to believe it, and you wanted to go there. And you knew there was no turning back. People would refer to you as the whore who sold herself to the Chinese, but you couldn't care less. You've made up your mind, and this was what you needed to know. Go to any train station in North or South Hamgyong province and just linger there until someone approaches you with an offer. The offer should look something like this. A guide would escort you safely across the Tumen River into China. You would be given clothing and food until you are matched up. The broker would find you a respectable man with whom you will live as a wife, even though both parties are aware this marriage would not be recognized by Chinese law. In return, you would agree to stay with the man chosen for you, and you're not going to get any cut of the money. Because your crossing, your escape, was your payment. These terms might appear skeptical to you, but for the hungry women in North Korea, any term that can help them get out was a perfect term. By some estimates, 3/4 of the roughly 100,000 North Korean defectors living in China are women, and more than half of them living in arranged unions with Chinese men. You have no idea how cold this is. It looks sunny, but gosh, man, I couldn't feel my hands at all. Anyways, we have arrived at the third most common defection route along the Tumen River, the Onsong Liangshui route. That North Korean city right over there, across this cornfield, is called Onsong. And Onsong is one of the northernmost counties in North Korea with the longest winter and the most unproductive land. It is the definition of hopelessness. Since the 15th century, this place has been the frontier to safeguard the Koreans from the Chinese and the Georgians. For centuries, anywhere north of Onsong, which is where I'm standing right now, was considered unsafe. But for the past 20 years, this unsafe land has become the destination of thousands of North Koreans. The shoreline here is a closed military area, and as you can see, the riverbanks are flat and sandy with nothing to provide cover. But a few miles east or west of Onsong, there is a place with really tall grass to provide cover. The border guards there are spaced far away and usually fall asleep after midnight, making it a perfect crossing spot. And once on the other side, they would find an extensive network of smugglers and brokers here in Liangshui who could help the defectors get a job or even sneak into South Korea. By the 2000s, the Chinese were fed up with the North Korean defectors. Just imagine 100,000 to 150,000 hungry North Koreans sneaking into your country in the middle of the night. It's not a pretty picture, man. And let me remind you of this. Many of the defectors were extremely hungry and young, who would do whatever was necessary to get food. And some of them even had a taste of human flesh. As a matter of fact, as late as the 2010s, there was still news about North Korean defectors killing the local Chinese. But in just 8 months from September 2014 to April 2015, 10 Chinese were brutally killed by the North Korean defectors. And so many more Chinese, ethnic Korean or not, were killed, raped, or crippled by these North Korean defectors in the late 1990s and early 2000s. That's why I always feel sick whenever I hear human rights advocates condemning China for sending the North Korean defectors back. I mean, what about those dead Chinese? What human rights did they get to enjoy? Suppose China doesn't arrest them and send them back. In that case, it is only a matter of time before the entire population of the North and South Hamgyong provinces sneaks into China. Because once North Koreans realize that defection has zero consequences from the Chinese side, more people will be encouraged to do so. And the influx of millions of hungry North Koreans will certainly become a nightmare for both the Chinese people and the Chinese government. And even the South Koreans are having trouble taking in North Korean defectors, let alone the Chinese. I wonder if the human rights advocates ever thought about this. Refugees should be helped, and their rights should be protected, but not at the expense of others.
In this video, there are two ways of seeing the same journey. One follows those who cross the border. The other comes from the people who lived on the other side, especially ethnic Koreans in China. Both perspectives exist. Neither is complete on its own. I care about both communities deeply, and I believe responsibility begins with acknowledging that complexity. Which narration you find more convincing is entirely up to you. My role is to bring together as much context and information as possible. What you choose to believe and how you interpret it is your decision. Jingwu out.